Mr. Kirigaya, I don't feel so good.
Merry Christmas to everyone, except Sword Art Online fans. The Sword Art Online Christmas episode, Red-Nosed Reindeer, might be one of the most baffling holiday specials ever made. It tries so hard to be serious and somber that it completely forgets what Christmas is supposed to feel like. Instead of warmth, joy, or even a little fun, it drags you into a gloomy mess that makes you wonder why they even bothered calling it a Christmas episode. Christmas should lift your spirits, but Sword Art Online somehow turns it into a slow, sad slog that misses the entire point of the holiday. Christmas is supposed to be the most wonderful time of the year, a time filled with light, comfort, and joy. Yet this episode somehow manages to pull all of that away and leave you feeling miserable while you watch it. Instead of giving you a warm holiday moment, it drags you through sadness and gloom until you forget it is even a Christmas special at all. It feels like the writers took the holiday spirit, tossed it aside, and replaced it with pure emotional weight that does not fit the season in any way. By the end, you are not smiling, you are not cheering. You're just wondering how a Christmas episode could miss the entire mood of Christmas so completely. As for the episode itself, the writing is absolutely terrible. Right from the start, nothing makes sense. Why is Kirito even on the lower floors helping weaker players? He is supposed to be on the front lines, clearing floors and pushing the game forward, not wandering around wasting time like he forgot his entire role in the story. The show tries to paint it as some deep, meaningful moment, but it just comes off as lazy writing. Instead of building tension or progress, the episode stalls out and pulls Kirito away from the main plot for no good reason. It feels out of character, out of place, and completely out of touch with what the story is supposed to be doing. Why did Kirito even bother saving the moonlit black cats in the first place? He is supposed to be a solo player, that is his whole identity. A solo player does not jump in to help random groups or act like a team hero. The moment he starts saving other people and carrying them through fights, he is no longer playing solo. It completely breaks the logic of the story and makes his label meaningless. The show wants to have it both ways by calling him a lone wolf while also having him act like a full-time support carry. It feels forced and fake, like the rules only matter when the writer feels like it. If Kirito was truly a solo player, then he would have kept moving and minded his own business instead of turning into a walking safety net for weaker players. And if the moonlit black cats are so scared of dying, they literally do not have to do anything at all. They can just stay in the safe zone forever. No one is forcing them to fight, grind, or risk their lives. This is what completely breaks the death game premise. The danger is treated as absolute, but participation is voluntary. Unlike something like the Hunger Games, Alice in Borderland, or Battle Royale, where people are forced to play or die, Sword Art Online lets players opt out by doing nothing. Once you realize that, the tension collapses. The fear feels fake, the drama feels forced, and the entire concept starts to fall apart. If survival is as simple as staying put, then the story is not about life or death. It is about bad choices dressed up as stakes. And why did they have that one guy from the Moonlit Black Cats squinting the entire time? It feels lazy, uncomfortable, and full of ugly stereotypes. Instead of writing an actual personality, the show leans on cheap visual traits that add nothing to the story. It comes off as tone-deaf and careless, like no one stopped to think about how it would look or feel to viewers. Moments like that make the series feel dated and poorly thought out, and it just adds to the pile of reasons why the writing and character design in this show are so weak. The series was written by an Asian author, which makes the use of lazy stereotypes even more disappointing. Instead of pushing things forward or showing care in how characters are portrayed, the writing falls back on old, tired tropes that should have been left behind long ago. It does not reflect the range or depth of real people, and it ends up hurting the story more than helping it. When a modern series relies on this kind of shallow depiction, it feels outdated and careless rather than bold or meaningful. And of course, this whole scene is just characters sitting around and talking to each other. Better get used to it, because most of Sword Art Online is nothing but exposition dumping. Instead of action, tension, or excitement, the show constantly stops so characters can explain things out loud. It feels lazy and dull, like the writer does not trust the audience to understand anything without being spoon-fed every detail. Scenes drag on with endless talking while the actual game world is pushed to the side. For a series that is supposed to be about danger and survival, it spends an embarrassing amount of time doing nothing at all. Kirito lies and says that he is level 20 or so when he is actually level 40. Why are players even able to hide their levels in this game? It serves no purpose at all except to scam or trick people. No real MMORPG allows players to hide their levels because it destroys balance, trust, and basic gameplay design. Imagine entering a PvP fight and having no idea what level your opponent is. You would have no strategy, no planning, and no way to judge danger. It would be pure chaos in the worst way. The fact that Sword Art Online treats this as a normal feature shows how little thought went into the world building. You can tell the author has no real experience with MMORPGs and did not do any research. It feels like a made-up rule tossed in to force drama instead of building a believable game system. And the show even claims that it is rude to ask other players about their level, which makes no sense at all. In an MMO, that kind of information is completely normal and often important. Players ask about levels all the time to form parties, plan fights, or avoid getting wiped. There's nothing rude about it. The fact that the story treats this as some social taboo just shows how out of touch the writing is. It feels like the author does not actually understand how online games work or how players interact. When a series built around an MMO gets basic MMO culture wrong, it only proves how little real experience went into writing it. Kirito himself even admits that playing solo is not very efficient, since solo players can only pick off weak or isolated enemies. That is his own logic, and yet he is somehow the strongest player in the entire game. It does not add up at all. If solo play is truly that limited, then a solo player should never be anywhere near the top. The show wants Kirito to sound humble and self-aware, but it completely fails to follow through. It keeps telling the audience one thing while showing the exact opposite. The result is a main character who breaks the rules of the world just by existing, making the game feel fake and the writing feel careless. If the story actually respected its own logic, Kirito would not be the best player by a long shot. Why did Kirito even join the guild? He is supposed to be a solo player, yet he spends almost the entire show doing anything but playing solo. The writing cannot keep his character consistent at all. One moment the story claims he works alone, and the next moment he is suddenly acting like a full-time party member for no clear reason. It feels sloppy, rushed, and poorly thought out. Instead of building a believable arc for Kirito, the episode just throws him into a guild because it needs drama, not because it makes sense for his character. The result is a messy story that contradicts everything the show tells you about him. Literally at the end of the previous episode, Kirito gives this big dramatic speech about how he is going to play solo from now on. The show frames it like a serious choice, almost a turning point for his character. Then, at the very start of the next episode, he immediately goes back on his word. There is no build-up, no struggle, no consequences. It makes the speech feel pointless and fake. Why should anyone take his words seriously if the story does not even respect them for one episode? Moments like this make it clear that the writing just does whatever it wants from scene to scene, even if it completely contradicts itself. Is this really the character we are supposed to root for? Someone who cannot stay consistent for even 2 episodes in a row? He gives big speeches about his beliefs and choices, then drops them the moment the plot needs him to. There's no growth, no resolve, and no weight to his actions. It makes him feel fake and unreliable, not heroic. If the main character cannot stand by his own words for more than 5 minutes, it is hard to care about anything he says or does after that. Sachi has no idea what to do, which actually makes sense when you remember that the game has no tutorial at all. This highlights just how poorly designed the game is. New players are completely lost with no guidance on even the most basic mechanics. In real MMOs, tutorials exist to show players the ropes, explain controls, and teach essential strategies so they can survive and enjoy the game. Sword Art Online ignores all of that, leaving beginners confused and frustrated, which makes the world feel unrealistic and poorly thought out. All of the Moonlit Black Cats members are part of the PC Research Club at their school. But what even is a PC Research Club? What does that mean? What do they actually do? The show never explains it clearly, and it feels like a meaningless detail thrown in to make the characters seem more interesting or nerdy. Without context, it just raises questions instead of adding anything to the story. Viewers are left wondering if it is supposed to be about programming, gaming, or just sitting around with computers. And the lack of clarity makes the world feel shallow and poorly developed. The characters are fighting some random praying mantis-looking monster, and it really shows how inconsistent the game design is. There is no clear logic to what kinds of enemies appear. One moment it is giant insects, the next it is animals, and then suddenly there are mythical creatures thrown in for no reason. Nothing feels cohesive or planned, and it makes the world seem chaotic instead of dangerous. A well-designed game would have rules for its enemies, but Sword Art Online just mixes everything together, leaving players and viewers confused and frustrated. There is a mechanic called Switch, where players supposedly switch positions with each other during combat. That is not how it works in real MMOs. In most games, there is usually a dedicated tank who holds aggro, keeping enemies focused on them while DPS and healers stay in their roles. Positions are carefully managed, not swapped randomly mid-fight. Sword Art Online completely ignores this, making the combat feel unrealistic and poorly thought out. The system exists only to create tension or drama, not to reflect how actual MMO mechanics function. And if Kirito is helping the guild members level up, how do they not notice that he does way more damage than anyone else and takes almost no damage in return? The show makes everyone else look completely incompetent just so Kirito can appear like a god. It completely breaks immersion because no normal players would fail to notice someone carrying every fight effortlessly. The story bends reality to make him look amazing instead of creating believable challenges or teamwork. It turns what should be a game with risk and strategy into a pointless showcase for one overpowered character. Even if these are new or inexperienced players, they should still notice that something is off. Kirito clearly outperforms everyone else by a huge margin, yet the other players act like he is normal and around the same level as them. That is completely laughable. No one in a real MMO would fail to pick up on someone who is so obviously overpowered. And the show expects the audience to just accept it. It makes the other characters look blind and the story feel even more unrealistic. Why do players need to read what happened in a newspaper? That makes no sense in a digital game. It is completely inefficient. In a real online world, players would just send messages to each other, post announcements, or use in-game alerts to share information instantly. Having them rely on a printed newspaper every week is absurd and slows down the story unnecessarily. It feels like the writers added it just for drama, not because it actually fits the logic of an MMO world. Kirito mentions that the difference between the lead groups and everyone else is that the lead groups know all the fastest ways to gain XP and refuse to share them. That is a complete lie. In the previous episode, we saw beta testers writing free guidebooks and sharing strategies with other players. The show cannot even keep up with its own logic. It wants to make Kirito and the top players seem special and exclusive, but the events already shown completely contradict that. Moments like this make the story feel careless and inconsistent, as if the writers are only thinking about drama instead of a coherent game world. And it should not even be that difficult to figure out the best ways to get XP in this game. The strategy is obvious: just kill the mobs on the highest floor you can reach. It is not rocket science, and any competent player would figure that out quickly. The show tries to make it seem like only a few elite players know how to level efficiently, but in reality it is straightforward and common sense. Portraying it as some secret mystery just makes the writing feel forced and unnecessarily dramatic. There is a sappy moment about willpower and protecting friends that is just cringe. The show tries way too hard to be serious and emotional, but it comes off as forced and cheesy instead of touching. The dialogue is overdramatic. The characters do not earn the sentiment, and it feels like the writers are telling the audience how to feel rather than letting the story naturally create emotion. Moments like this make the series feel immature and melodramatic, completely undercutting any tension or stakes it tries to build. The guild names in this show are terrible. Names like Holy Dragon Alliance and Knights of the Blood Oath sound like something a 5-year-old would come up with. They are over-the-top cheesy and completely fail to feel believable or intimidating. Instead of adding depth or world building, these names make the game world feel childish and ridiculous. It is hard to take the story seriously when the supposed elite guilds have names that belong in a fantasy coloring book rather than a high-stakes MMO. The guild leader mentions that there is nothing wrong with setting big goals, But that is completely wrong. There are actually plenty of problems with being overly ambitious, especially in a dangerous game where lives are at risk. Big goals can lead to reckless decisions, unnecessary risks, and overconfidence that puts everyone in danger. The show tries to make ambition sound noble, but in reality it often causes more harm than good. Pretending that aiming for massive achievements is automatically positive ignores the very real consequences of failure. Kirito thinks the Moonlit Black Cats members can change the insular atmosphere of the high-level community. Not a chance. MMO players, especially the experienced and top-level ones, are not going to take advice from random noobs. The idea that a few new players could influence the behavior of seasoned veterans is completely unrealistic. It makes Kirito look naive and the story feel disconnected from how actual online communities work. In reality, the high-level community would ignore them entirely, and any attempt to change the culture would fall flat. I know that for a fact because I am always among the top players in every MMORPG I play, and I never listen to random noobs. Experience and skill matter far more than enthusiasm or good intentions. New players trying to give advice or change how the top players behave would be ignored every time. This makes the belief of Kirito that the Moonlit Black Cats could influence the high-level community even more ridiculous and unrealistic. The show completely misunderstands how MMO communities actually work. Kirito is level 48 now. How is he even leveling up so quickly when he is wasting time helping the guild members? Does he somehow have 50 hours in a day or something? It makes no sense at all. Spending time supporting other players should slow down his own progress, yet he keeps advancing at an absurd rate. The show completely ignores basic logic and MMO mechanics just to make Kirito look overpowered, which makes the whole leveling system feel fake and arbitrary. The guild members want to buy their own house, which seems like a completely dumb decision. In a game that is all about survival, getting the best equipment and weapons would be the smarter choice. A better house does nothing to help in combat or protect you from danger. Prioritizing a house over leveling up, gear, or strategy makes the characters look foolish and wastes time that could have been spent actually improving their chances of survival. It is another example of the writing ignoring logic for the sake of filler or unnecessary plot points. The show completely forgets what is actually at stake here. Instead of creating tension or danger, it feels more like a slice-of-life series than a death game. Characters wander around chat and focus on trivial things while the supposed threat of dying in a deadly game is barely acknowledged. The stakes are supposed to be life and death, but the story treats them like background noise. That makes the tension feel fake and the entire premise of a survival game meaningless. Kirito says that he does not mind protecting the Moonlit Black Cats members forever, which is just ridiculous. His priorities should be clearing floors, leveling up efficiently, and helping everyone escape the death game, not babysitting lower-level players. Spending time protecting them slows his own progress and does nothing to advance the larger goal of survival. I am sure the Moonlit Black Cats members would much rather focus on getting out of the game as quickly as possible, instead of relying on one overpowered player to carry them. This makes the actions of Kirito feel pointless, and the story even more illogical. How come Kirito sneaks out at night to train? If players do not actually need to sleep in the game, then why does anyone bother doing it at all? It makes no sense. The show acts like rest is optional, yet it also treats sleep as some kind of normal routine for the characters. The gameplay logic is all over the place. If you can grind non-stop without any penalty, then everyone should be doing it, not just Kirito. And if there are penalties for staying awake, the show never explains them. It feels like the writers wanted a dramatic secret training scene, but did not think about how the game world is supposed to work. The rules keep changing whenever the plot needs something, and it makes the entire system feel inconsistent and poorly designed. And sleeping inside an MMORPG is a complete waste of time. Who would even do that if this were a real game? No one is going to log into a virtual world just to sleep when they can already do that in real life. It serves no purpose for leveling, combat, or strategy and only slows down the story. Moments like this make the game world feel unrealistic and poorly thought out, highlighting how the show often prioritizes filler or drama over believable gameplay mechanics. Kirito encounters Klein and his buddies training as well. How is it even possible that Kirito randomly bumped into them out of the thousands of other players in the game? They are not friends, so there is no reason for them to be tracking each other or meeting by chance. It feels completely contrived, like the writers forced this encounter just to create drama or camaraderie. Moments like this break immersion and make the game world feel smaller and less realistic than it should be. Klein notices that Kirito has joined a guild because there is an icon near his HP bar. So you can see if another player is in a guild and what guild they are in based on the icon, but you cannot see their level. That makes no sense at all. If anything, hiding your guild affiliation would actually make a lot more sense than hiding your level, since knowing the strength and level of other players is far more important in an MMO. This inconsistency shows how the game mechanics in the show are poorly thought out and only exist to serve the plot, rather than being realistic or logical. You can hide your guild in many MMOs, but your level is almost impossible to conceal. Sword Art Online gets this completely wrong. The series treats player levels as a hidden secret while presenting guild affiliation as an unavoidable public marker, which is the exact opposite of how real online games function. This is not a minor oversight. It is a failure to understand one of the most basic mechanics of the genre. The mistake makes it obvious that the author did not do even minimal research, and did not care to portray MMOs with any degree of accuracy. Klein wonders if Kirito is still upset about leaving him on the first day. Why does that even matter? Kirito already made his choice, and Klein should just move on. As he himself said, they have not seen each other in a long time and are not particularly close. Obsessing over a minor slight from the past only makes the characters seem petty and the story unnecessarily drawn out. It adds drama where none is needed and slows down the pacing of the plot. Kirito returns to town and gets a message that Sachi went missing, then uses his tracking skill to see her footsteps and find her. Why does this skill even exist in the game? It seems like a massive invasion of privacy. Players could easily use something like this to stalk or harass others, which would be a huge problem in a real MMO. Including a skill like this just for plot convenience feels unrealistic and poorly thought out, and it makes the game world seem unbalanced and unsafe. Kirito finds Sachi sitting under a bridge, and she admits that she is scared of dying. But as mentioned before, she could just stay in the safe zone forever and not do anything. This fear makes no sense at all. It would be like being able to voluntarily choose not to participate in Squid Game. Most people would simply avoid the danger entirely. Making her afraid while giving her a completely safe option just highlights how poorly the story handles logic and tension, and it makes the supposed life or death stakes feel completely meaningless. Sachi wonders what the point of all this is, which is exactly the same question I'm asking. This entire show feels pointless and unnecessary. Why does it even exist? The story drags along with contrived conflicts, weak logic, and shallow characters, offering nothing meaningful or engaging. Watching it feels like a waste of time because there is no clear purpose, no real tension, and no payoff, just endless filler and questionable writing choices. Kirito says he does not think there is a point to any of this, but then why even do anything at all? If he truly believes there is no meaning, no goal, and no reason to keep going, he can just sit inside the safe zone and stop playing entirely. The show wants him to sound deep and thoughtful, but it just makes him come off as inconsistent. You cannot claim nothing matters and then keep charging into danger like it does. Either there is a reason to fight and move forward, or there is not. The story refuses to pick one, and that only makes the character and the whole premise feel hollow and poorly thought out. Kirito promises Sachi that she will not die, which is a completely dumb thing to say. Everyone is going to die one day, and no one, especially a player in a death game, can make that kind of guarantee. It is an empty, unrealistic promise that makes Kirito seem naive and the scene feel forced. Instead of adding tension or emotional weight, it just highlights how poorly the story handles stakes and logic. Promises like that in a life or death situation are meaningless and make the character look foolish rather than heroic. Kirito says that the Moonlit Black Cats is a strong guild, but if he really believed that, then he would not need to constantly waste time protecting them and helping them. It makes no sense. Either they are strong or they are not. It is the same kind of contradiction you see from Sword Art Online fans, who claim the series is perfect and does not need defending, yet turn around and spend countless hours defending it themselves. The story and the fans both create this false sense of competence and importance that does not hold up under scrutiny, making everything feel inconsistent and poorly justified. The hypocrisy is off the charts. If the Moonlit Black Cats are really as strong as Kirito claims, Then he should stop constantly protecting them and let them fend for themselves. Either they are capable players or they are not. His actions completely contradict his own words. This kind of inconsistency makes the story feel lazy and the characters less believable, as the show keeps saying one thing while showing the exact opposite. Kirito promises Sachi that she will get back to reality someday, and Sachi is happy to hear it. But Kirito really needs to stop giving people false hope. There is no guarantee of survival in this death game, and making promises like that is unrealistic and irresponsible. Instead of inspiring confidence, it highlights how naive and careless the writing is. These kinds of statements make the stakes feel meaningless and undermine any tension the story is trying to build. Kirito is not actually helping Sachi. Instead, he is inflating her ego and making her even more reckless. The smarter choice would be to agree that the game is too dangerous and stay in the safe zone indefinitely, rather than encouraging her to fight. By pushing her into combat, he is putting her at unnecessary risk and creating tension that could have been avoided. This help is not practical or logical. It only serves to make the story feel forced and the character's decisions seem foolish. Sachi comes to the room Kirito is in to sleep in bed with him. Why is this even a feature in the game? You can just sleep with other players? That makes no sense in an MMO and is completely inappropriate, especially since many children play this game as well. Including something like this serves no purpose for gameplay or story, and it crosses serious boundaries. It makes the world feel uncomfortable and poorly thought out, highlighting how careless the writing can be when it comes to logic and age-appropriate content. And why would any girl fall for Kirito? He is a liar, makes false promises, cannot even keep his own word, and has zero charm or charisma. The fact that the writer made all the girls fall in love with him instantly is laughable. It completely ignores realistic behavior and personality, turning him into an overpowered self-insert fantasy rather than a believable character. Moments like this make the romance in the show feel forced, shallow, and downright ridiculous. The guild leader goes to buy a house, while the other guild members head to a dungeon on a higher floor to make more money. This is exactly why Kirito should not be helping the guild. His presence has made them overconfident and reckless. Instead of sticking to their usual hunting spots where they can safely level up and earn money, they think they can take on challenges beyond their skill because Kirito is there to protect them. His help is actually encouraging bad decisions and putting everyone at unnecessary risk, which completely undermines the logic of the game world. The characters walk into a secret room and trigger a trap after opening the treasure chest, getting locked in with a bunch of monsters. This is a completely dumb mechanic. Players should be rewarded for discovering a hidden area, not punished for it. If this were a real game, people would get frustrated, feel cheated, and probably quit. Traps like this make no sense in terms of game design and only serve to create artificial tension for the story, which ends up feeling forced and annoying rather than exciting. The room is an anti-crystal zone, so the players cannot use teleportation. Another dumb mechanic. Players should be able to use the items they earned, like teleport crystals, in situations exactly like this. The whole point of having these crystals is to escape or survive dangerous encounters, so not being able to use them here is completely baffling. It makes the game feel unfair and artificially restrictive, and it only exists to force the plot to create tension instead of letting the world operate logically. Why would the game allow players to obtain teleport crystals, but then not let them use them to get out of a dangerous situation? It makes no sense. It would be like working hard in real life to buy something, only to discover that some arbitrary law prevents you from using it. The restriction feels completely artificial and unfair, and it only exists to force the characters into danger instead of letting the mechanics they earned actually work. This kind of design breaks immersion and makes the game world feel unrealistic. In real MMOs, players are always warned beforehand if they cannot teleport out of an area. It is never a surprise. This allows them to prepare properly and enter the area knowing the limitations, rather than being caught off guard. Unlike this scene where the restriction is suddenly revealed, real games give players the chance to plan and make strategic decisions. Making it a surprise like this only feels cheap and unfair, and it breaks the logic of how a well-designed MMO should operate. How exactly were the players even supposed to get out of this situation? If they cannot teleport, the only other option would be to kill all of the monsters in the room. At their current level, that is completely impossible. The challenge is not based on skill or strategy, it is just unfair and artificially forced. This kind of scenario makes the game feel broken and the story feel contrived, as the characters are trapped not by logic or planning, but by arbitrary rules designed solely to create tension. Everyone except Kirito dies, and we are supposed to feel sad or emotional about it, which is laughable. We barely even know these characters. Apart from Sachi, I honestly do not even remember their names. They only appeared for half an episode and no real development or connection was given. The show tries to force grief and drama. But since the audience has no attachment to these characters, it falls completely flat and comes off as manipulative rather than moving. And the players died way too easily, taking only a couple of hits. They did not even bother trying to defend themselves or heal. It makes no sense from a gameplay or logical perspective. Real players in a dangerous MMO would use every tool and strategy available to survive, rather than dropping instantly. This just highlights how the scene exists purely to create drama for Kirito, making the deaths feel cheap and the story lazy. And perhaps there were so many monsters that spawned because of Kirito being at such a high level. Maybe the spawn rate and the strength of the mobs is based on the average level of the players in the room, so having someone as overpowered as Kirito could have unintentionally triggered far more enemies than the other players could handle. If that is the case, it makes his presence feel like a liability rather than a help. Yet the show ignores this possibility entirely. Instead, it just uses the situation to force drama, making the mechanics inconsistent and the story feel contrived. Kirito getting all worked up over the death of Sachi is actually hilarious. It is not sad or heartbreaking at all. It is completely his own fault. He did not properly help or guide the moonlit black cats, leaving them reckless and vulnerable. Instead of taking responsibility for the consequences of his actions, he cries over the results, which makes him look selfish and incompetent rather than heroic. The scene is meant to be emotional, but it comes off as absurd and poorly written. We skip to Christmas Eve and Kirito talks to an information broker named Argo. She tells him about a first-time event that was not in the beta test, so there is no possible way for her to get information about it. So what even is the point of information brokers if the real game is completely different from the beta? Their guidance is supposed to help players plan and survive, but when the game changes unexpectedly, their role feels useless. It makes the whole system seem pointless and highlights how poorly thought out the game mechanics are in the story. Kirito already has an idea of where the event boss will spawn. So what was the point of wasting time and energy talking to Argo then? Her information did nothing that Kirito did not already know, making the scene feel unnecessary and filler. It adds nothing to the story, slows down the pacing, and just highlights how poorly the show handles the usefulness of its characters and plot points. And we literally never see Argo again for the rest of the series. She has a bigger role in Progressive, but this is not Progressive. So her inclusion in this random scene is completely unnecessary and pointless. The show just inserts her for no reason, wasting time and adding a character who has no impact on the story. It makes the narrative feel cluttered and poorly planned, highlighting how inconsistent the writing can be. They are already rushing through the story and skipping so many floors, so why bother wasting time on filler scenes? Every moment should be moving the plot forward or building meaningful character development. But instead the show drags on with pointless interactions and unnecessary events. It makes the pacing feel uneven and frustrating, turning what could be a tense, engaging story into a series of dull, wasted minutes. There is a rumor that the event boss will drop an item capable of reviving the dead. But in episode 1, the game creator literally said there is no way to revive anyone. That is a huge contradiction. The show completely ignores its own rules just to create hype or drama, which makes the story feel inconsistent and unreliable. When the rules of the world keep changing, it is impossible to take any stakes seriously, and the tension the writers are trying to build falls flat. It is hard to believe that the creator of the game would not know about a revival item, especially in a death game. If such a powerful and game-changing item existed, the creator would be fully aware of it and its implications since he was the one who programmed everything. Ignoring this makes the story feel careless and poorly thought out. It undermines the credibility of the game world and shows how the writers prioritize plot twists over logical consistency. A flashback scene shows that the guild leader discovered the true level of Kirito. He was so devastated by the deaths of the other members that he jumped off a ledge to his own death. This is exactly why hiding your level in a game should not be an option. If Kirito had never been able to conceal his level, the guild leader would have seen the disparity and made smarter decisions, and this tragedy could have been avoided entirely. Moments like this highlight how arbitrary game mechanics in the story create unnecessary consequences. And honestly, why did Kirito even tell him the truth? If I were in his position, I would be too ashamed to admit what happened and would just come up with a lie. Kirito has been lying to the guild leader this whole time anyway, so telling the truth would not have been any different from what he has been doing. This moment feels unnecessary and poorly justified, making the choice of Kirito seem inconsistent and the drama feel forced. And they should not be talking near the ledge. If they had stayed in a safe area, the guild leader would not have had the opportunity to jump off. Putting characters in such a dangerous spot for the sake of drama is careless writing. It creates unnecessary risk that could easily be avoided and makes the scene feel artificially tense rather than believable. Kirito admits that his arrogance got the Moonlit Black Cats members killed, which is exactly what I have been saying this whole time. Why did it take him so long to realize the truth? This delay makes him seem slow and unaware, and it drags out the story unnecessarily. The moment feels like it should have come much earlier. As the consequences of his actions were obvious from the start, yet the show wastes time before finally acknowledging the problem. Kirito goes to find the event boss and encounters Klein and his guild again. They were following him, which is exactly why that should not even be an option. There is no privacy in the game, and players can easily track each other without consent. This mechanic is unrealistic and creates unnecessary complications, making the world feel poorly designed and forcing interactions that should not logically happen. Klein tells Kirito that playing solo is stupid and that he should join them, which is actually the sensible choice. Playing solo in a death game is far too risky and reckless. But considering what happened to the previous guild Kirito was in, joining another one is not exactly the best option for him either. He is caught between two bad choices, and the story tries to make him look clever for refusing one, even though both options have obvious risks. This highlights how the plot forces drama instead of letting realistic decisions guide the character. The Holy Dragon Alliance shows up, so Klein and his guild hold them off while Kirito fights the event boss alone. The boss is named Nicholas the Renegade, which is a baffling choice. It is supposedly based on Saint Nicholas, the inspiration for Santa Claus, but where does the renegade part even come in? The name makes no sense in context and feels like a random attempt to sound edgy or dramatic. It is just another example of the inconsistent and poorly thought out world building of the show. Renegade means someone who betrayed or deserted their organization. So what did Nicholas do to earn the title of Renegade? There is no explanation in the show. It honestly feels like the author does not even know what the word means and just picked it because he thought it sounded cool or edgy. This kind of careless naming makes the story feel shallow and shows a lack of attention to detail in the writing. Kirito ends up killing the boss solo, which is completely absurd. He is way too overpowered, and there are no real stakes when he can literally take down bosses all on his own. The tension that should come from a dangerous fight is completely lost, and the scene feels pointless. Instead of creating suspense or showcasing strategy, the show just relies on Kirito being a walking god, which makes the story predictable and boring, and they did not even bother showing the fight at all. It just cuts straight to Kirito being victorious. I guess the animators ran out of budget or simply did not care that the audience wanted action. Skipping the battle completely makes the victory feel hollow and unsatisfying, turning what should have been an intense, thrilling moment into a lazy, anticlimactic scene. The audience wants to see an epic boss battle, not characters sitting around and talking. Long dialogue scenes during what should be high-stakes action completely kill the tension and excitement. Instead of feeling engaged and thrilled, viewers are left bored, watching filler that adds nothing to the story and interrupts the pacing of the fight. Kirito gets the revival item, but it turns out that it only works on a player within 10 seconds of their death. That means he cannot use it on Sachi, since she died a long time ago. Too bad. This limitation makes the item feel almost useless in the story and highlights how the show creates hope only to immediately crush it. It is another example of poor planning in the game mechanics and storytelling, leaving the audience frustrated instead of satisfied. And why does the Christmas event boss even drop the revival item? What is the connection between a seasonal event and an item that can bring players back to life? It makes no sense in terms of story or game logic. The drop feels completely arbitrary, like the writers just wanted a dramatic twist without thinking about how it fits into the world they created. This kind of randomness weakens the story and makes the game world feel poorly constructed. And if this were a real game, the revival item would not even be that useful. Players already respawn in the game and of course, do not actually die in real life if they die in the game. Making such an item a major plot point is ridiculous and unnecessary. And it only exists to force drama rather than serve any logical purpose within the game world. Kirito gives the revival item to Klein and tells him to use it on the next player he sees die. We literally never see the revival item again for the rest of the series. Why even bother introducing such a powerful item if it is never going to be used? It would have been fascinating to see it in action later on, creating a payoff for the earlier setup. Instead, the show wastes the potential of this plot device, proving once again that the author is not thinking ahead or handling the story intelligently. The author has admitted multiple times in various interviews that he does not plan anything out beforehand, and just makes stuff up as he goes along. This makes perfect sense because moments like this happen all the time in the series. Things are set up and then never paid off. Plot threads are left hanging, and storylines are never properly resolved. It shows a complete lack of planning and consistency, which is why the series often feels messy and unsatisfying. And it was pretty stupid of Kirito to give the revival item to Klein. He could have kept it for himself and used it on someone he was closer to in the future. Giving away such a unique and powerful item so casually is foolish and short-sighted. It makes no sense strategically, and it highlights how the decisions of the characters are often driven by convenience for the plot rather than logic or intelligence. Klein starts crying and wants Kirito to survive. He seriously needs to move on. Kirito does not care about him and his tears come across as unnecessary melodrama. The scene tries to force emotion, but it falls flat because the relationship between the characters has never justified that level of attachment. It just feels overblown and unrealistic. Kirito goes back to his room and receives a message from Sachi containing a gift box. It turns out she sent the message in advance so it would be delivered to Kirito on Christmas. Why is this even a feature in the game? It would be extremely easy to abuse. Players could schedule gifts or messages to manipulate others or spam the system, making the mechanic feel unrealistic and poorly thought out. It exists only to create a sentimental moment rather than serving any logical purpose in the game world. Sachi wishes Kirito a Merry Christmas, but there's nothing merry about it. The scene is meant to be heartwarming, yet it feels hollow and out of place given everything that has happened. Instead of joy, the audience is left thinking about the deaths and chaos surrounding them, making the merry moment awkward and ineffective. Sachi knows that by the time Kirito receives her message, she will probably be dead. It would be awkward if she were still alive when he read it. Is there even a way to rescind messages to other players in the game? This raises questions about how the messaging system works and highlights how unrealistic and poorly thought out some of the game mechanics are. The feature exists only to create forced drama rather than making sense within the world. Sachi admits that she never wanted to leave the starting town, so why did she leave in the first place? If she had just stayed there, she would still be alive. Kirito was at fault for not keeping her in a safe area and letting her take unnecessary risks. This shows how poorly the characters' decisions are handled and how the story blames circumstances rather than addressing obvious mistakes. Sachi knows that Kirito would blame himself if she were killed, so she recorded this message to let him know he is not at fault. But the truth is, he actually is at fault. If Kirito had been realistic with Sachi and not given her false hope, she might still be alive. Instead, his lies and empty promises encouraged her to take risks, turning a preventable situation into a tragedy. This highlights how poorly his actions are written and how the story tries to shift blame away from him. This writing is so terrible. Nobody over the age of 3 is going to fall for this. It is laughable how fans think this is deep or thought-provoking. The story tries to force emotion and drama, but it comes across as childish and absurd, making it impossible to take seriously. Sachi saw the true strength of Kirito, so she felt safe and relieved being with him in their guild. That is exactly why Kirito is at fault that Sachi died. He gave her a false sense of security, making her believe that she was protected when in reality she was still at risk. His overpowered abilities encouraged her to take chances she otherwise would not have, directly leading to the tragedy. Sachi wants Kirito to keep living so he can see the end of this world. That was obviously going to happen. There is no way the show would kill off the protagonist just 3 episodes in. Her message feels unnecessary and overly dramatic as the outcome for Kirito was never in doubt. It is another example of the story trying to manufacture tension where there is none. Since it is Christmas, Sachi sings Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer to Kirito. But what does this song have to do with anything? It feels completely random and out of place, adding nothing to the story or character development. The scene exists purely to be cute or festive, but it ends up feeling forced and unnecessary, highlighting how the show often prioritizes filler moments over meaningful storytelling. It is not even one of the more famous Christmas songs. In fact, the song is clearly aimed at children, which tells you everything you need to know about the intended audience. This choice makes the scene feel childish and out of place, especially given the supposedly high-stakes, dramatic context of the story. It highlights how the show misjudges tone and target viewers. And Sachi does not even sing the song, she just hums it. I guess they did not want to deal with copyright issues or licensing. It makes the scene feel half-hearted and awkward, as if the creators wanted the festive moment without actually committing to it. This adds to the overall sense of laziness and poor execution in the show. Kirito starts crying at the song, which completely ruins the festive spirit. As mentioned earlier, Christmas is supposed to be a happy time, not a moment for mourning and grief. This reaction feels forced and out of place, turning what should have been a cheerful scene into an awkward, depressing one. It highlights how the show struggles to balance tone and emotion effectively. Sachi says she is glad that she met Kirito, but that makes the whole thing even worse. Meeting Kirito is the reason she died in the first place. Before that, she was careful, scared, and wanted to stay safe. After Kirito showed up, she felt protected and started taking risks she never would have taken on her own. He gave her false comfort and pushed her into danger, even if he did not mean to. If Sachi had never met Kirito, she would not have gone chasing levels, joined risky fights, or believed someone else would always save her. She would still be alive. That makes the scene feel hollow instead of sad. Sachi being thankful is the exact opposite reaction she should be having. After everything that happened, she should be angry at Kirito, blaming him for putting her in danger and giving her false hope. Instead, the show tries to force a heartwarming moment that completely ignores the logic of the situation, making the scene feel absurd and emotionally hollow. This scene plays out like something a 5-year-old would write. The emotions are exaggerated, the logic makes no sense, and the characters act in ways that are completely unrealistic. It lacks maturity, depth, and any sense of real consequence, making the moment feel childish and poorly thought out. The last words that Sachi spoke were "thank you" and "goodbye." They are meant to feel heartfelt and emotional, but instead they come across as dumb and forced. The scene tries to manipulate the audience into feeling sad. Yet, the lack of proper build-up, logic, or character development makes it fall completely flat. Sachi barely knew Kirito, she had only known him for half an episode. So what does she mean by saying goodbye? To the audience, they had barely even met her. The moment is meant to be emotional, but it comes across as shallow and meaningless because there is no real connection established between the characters or with the viewers. When Iron Man dies in Avengers Endgame, people are sad because we have been following the character for over a decade. We did not meet him 10 minutes ago. His story, struggles, and growth have been carefully built up over many movies, so his death carries real emotional weight. This is completely different from Sachi, who the audience meets for only a few minutes. Her goodbye cannot generate the same impact because there is no long-term connection or investment in her character. The message ends, and so does the episode. Thank God it is finally over. In summary, this episode was painful to watch. Between the illogical plot, forced drama, and poorly developed characters, it drags on endlessly and leaves the viewer frustrated rather than entertained. It is easily one of the weakest installments of the series. The fact that so many people consider this to be the best episode is absolutely hilarious. If this is truly the best that Sword Art Online has to offer, then it says a lot about the overall quality of the series. The episode is full of pointless drama, bad writing, and illogical character decisions, so calling it the best is laughable. I suffered through this episode so you do not have to. Every frustrating plot point, every awkward scene, and every poorly written moment has already been endured, so you can skip the pain and avoid wasting your time. My analysis video ended up being much longer than the episode itself. When you can spend more time criticizing something than the thing actually lasts, that is a clear sign there is a serious problem with the source material. This episode was awful and perfectly demonstrates why Sword Art Online deserves to be on the naughty list. Between the sloppy writing, illogical plot points, and cringeworthy character moments, it is a prime example of everything that is wrong with the series. If you want to watch some actually good Christmas content, there are plenty of options out there. Skip Sword Art Online and choose one of those better alternatives instead. They are entertaining, well-made, and actually worth your time. Unlike Sword Art Online, which is a waste. Die Hard is an awesome movie for so many reasons, and it remains a must-watch even decades after its release. First, the story is tightly written and full of suspense. John McClane is a relatable, flawed hero, a regular cop thrown into an extraordinary situation so the audience can connect with him. The movie is packed with clever action sequences, intense tension, and memorable one-liners, all of which have become iconic in pop culture. The villains are smart and threatening, which makes the stakes feel real, and the setting, the Nakatomi Plaza, adds a claustrophobic, high-stakes atmosphere that keeps viewers on the edge of their seats. Unlike many action movies that rely purely on explosions, Die Hard balances action with character development, humor, and clever problem-solving. Overall, it is not just an action movie, it is a masterclass in pacing, suspense, and entertainment. Watching Die Hard is like taking a thrilling roller coaster ride that never lets up. And it set the standard for modern action films. Red One is a big holiday action comedy with a fun, globe-trotting adventure at its core. It stars Dwayne Johnson and Chris Evans as unlikely partners who must rescue Santa Claus on Christmas Eve, blending action, humor, and festive spirit in a way that feels exciting and fun for many viewers. What makes it fun is the entertaining mix of familiar stars, big set pieces, and a playful take on Christmas mythology. Even though critics panned it, many audiences have responded very positively, giving it high viewer scores and making it one of the most streamed films on Prime Video during the holiday season. It works especially well as a holiday movie to watch with family or friends when you just want something that is light, visual, and entertaining without demanding too much emotional investment. The chemistry between the leads, the festive theme, and the big budget set pieces make it a movie that a lot of people enjoy, even if it is not perfect. In short, Red One is worth watching if you like action comedies with heart, Christmas vibes, and a sense of fun, even if it does not reach classic status. The Polar Express is an incredible holiday movie that has become a modern Christmas classic. It tells the story of a young boy who boards a magical train on Christmas Eve, traveling to the North Pole and discovering the wonder, belief, and spirit of the holiday. The movie stands out for its stunning animation and visual style, which bring the magical train ride and the North Pole to life in a way that feels immersive and enchanting. The story is heartfelt, exploring themes like faith, imagination, and the joy of believing in the magic of Christmas, something both kids and adults can relate to. The voice cast, including Tom Hanks in multiple roles, adds warmth and personality to the characters, making the journey engaging and memorable. With its beautiful music, iconic scenes, and timeless message, The Polar Express is a movie that captures the excitement and wonder of Christmas, making it perfect for family viewing and a holiday tradition. It is more than just a movie, it is an experience that reminds viewers of the magic of the season and why believing in something special can be so meaningful. Home Alone is an absolute classic and one of the most beloved holiday movies of all time. It tells the story of Kevin McAllister, a clever and resourceful kid who is accidentally left home alone for Christmas and must defend his house from two bumbling burglars. The movie works on multiple levels. It is hilarious with slapstick comedy and inventive traps that keep audiences laughing from start to finish. At the same time, it has a heartwarming message about family, the importance of togetherness and learning to appreciate loved ones, making it both funny and emotionally satisfying. Macaulay Culkin's performance as Kevin is iconic, full of charm and wit, and the chemistry between the cast adds to the fun. The soundtrack, featuring John Williams' memorable themes, enhances the holiday atmosphere perfectly. Home Alone is timeless because it blends comedy, cleverness, and heart, making it a movie that both kids and adults can enjoy. It's the kind of film that captures the chaos, excitement, and magic of the holidays, and is perfect for watching year after year. Violent Night is a wild holiday action comedy that put a completely different spin on Christmas movies by turning Santa Claus into a tough, no-nonsense action hero who has to save a wealthy family from mercenaries who take them hostage on Christmas Eve. What makes it fun is how it mixes intense action with holiday chaos, blending creative fight scenes, crazily over-the-top combat, and a holiday theme that does not take itself too seriously. David Harbour delivers a charismatic, rough around the edges Santa that audiences find entertaining. And the film's balance of action and comedy gives it a feel similar to Die Hard meets A Twisted Christmas Story. Critics and audiences generally enjoyed it as a fun, violent holiday romp rather than a traditional Christmas movie. And many viewers appreciate it as a new kind of seasonal watch for people who want laughs, thrills, and something different. If you like action, humor, and a fresh take on holiday storytelling, Violent Night is definitely worth checking out. How the Grinch Stole Christmas, whether the 2000 live-action version with Jim Carrey or the classic animated 1966 version, is a holiday must-watch because it perfectly blends humor, heart, and a festive message. The story follows the Grinch, a bitter, green creature who hates Christmas and plans to steal it from the cheerful town of Hoville, only to discover the true meaning of the holiday. What makes the movie so memorable is its combination of comedy and emotion. The Grinch's mischievous schemes and sarcastic wit are hilarious, while the story's message about kindness, community, and the spirit of giving resonates with viewers of all ages. Jim Carrey's energetic and over-the-top performance in the live-action film makes the character unforgettable, while the animation of the original captures a timeless charm. The film's visuals, fun songs, and festive setting create a magical Christmas atmosphere. Ultimately, The Grinch is more than just a funny story. It's a movie that reminds audiences why Christmas is about more than presents, making it perfect for family viewing and holiday tradition. A Christmas Carol is a great movie because it tells a powerful, timeless story that never gets old. At its core, it is about redemption, change, and learning to care about others, which are themes that still matter today. Watching Ebenezer Scrooge go from a bitter, selfish man to someone kind and generous is deeply satisfying and meaningful. The story works so well because it balances emotion with atmosphere. The ghosts of Christmas past, present, and yet to come each serve a clear purpose, forcing Scrooge to face his mistakes, his loneliness, and his possible future. That journey gives the story real weight and makes the message feel earned instead of forced. On top of that, the Christmas setting adds warmth and contrast, making the transformation even stronger. Whether animated or live action, A Christmas Carol captures the spirit of the season while reminding viewers that it is never too late to change. That is why it remains a classic and a movie people return to year after year. As you can clearly see, there are a ton of far better Christmas-related movies and shows to watch. So there's absolutely no reason anyone should waste their time on Sword Art Online. I sat through it purely because bashing this garbage is my job, enduring every cringeworthy scene and ridiculous plot twist so you do not have to. Honestly, if you're watching it voluntarily, I have to ask, what is your excuse? Are you actively trying to punish yourself, or do you just have terrible taste? Either way, you could be enjoying something entertaining instead of torturing your brain with this mess. That wraps up my deep dive into just how terrible this episode of Sword Art Online really is. If you enjoyed watching me tear this dumpster fire apart, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to keep the hate flowing strong. There is plenty more to dissect, and you do not want to miss it. Stay tuned, and let's keep exposing this series for the disaster that it is. As a bonus for sticking around until now, let us take a look at what a live-action Sword Art Online would look like, as well as some other movies or shows afterwards.